For those that aren't aware, Greg?
Yeah, Morena councillors, thanks for having us today. So the purpose of this workshop is to take you through our broad-ranging emergency management responsibilities, and several of these have been at the front of our minds over the last, well, it's come up to about a month now, I suppose, since our initial floods. So a good opportunity to give you some background, to feed off some of the briefings that you've had from Julian as well in the CDM space, because it is important to draw a distinction between civil defence responsibilities and what we do as a council. So Pete and Derek are in our emergency management office, and we also have George, who couldn't make it today, but we do have a team of three that is charged with really ensuring that our organisation knows what it needs to be ready to respond to various activities, and including marine oil spill response, I suppose, is possibly the one that hasn't been too active in the last month or so, but that's another part of our responsibility too that we'll go through. So I'll hand it over to Pete and Pete and Derek to take you through.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks everybody for giving us the opportunity to present how the Emergency Management Office works in our council. And as Greg just touched on, our presentation today will be focusing on WRC's emergency management obligations and protocols and processes. You've already been briefed by Julian on how the civil defence end of it works. I will touch on how we synchronise with them in places. I also want to talk about how we prepare for different types of emergencies and the various external factors that affect our capability and capacity. I invite you to ask your questions as they come to mind as we go through. I am Derek Hartley, and team leader is Pete Searle. So, excuse me, what is the EMO? And why are we not going? Finally. So this is pretty much the reasons that we come to work every day in our office, is that we're there to identify risks, and I'll come to some more detail around that shortly. We're there to train our WRC staff so that they know how to respond to an emergency. We need to exercise, test and review our capability. And we need to make sure that we're meeting our legislative obligations. We do have some. That's our catch line there, to ensure that WRC is response ready and capable at all times. That's the message we're always pumping. And when we do need to, we will respond. I'm just, sorry, my computer's just lagging a bit. So why do we have an emergency management office? Well, we need to meet our legislative obligations, as I said before. And most importantly, the ratepayers have an expectation of our capability and capacity. Our staff are our most valuable tool, and to that end, we focus on giving our staff the competence and the confidence to operate in emergency situations. And I'll speak a bit later about that too, because that was one of the issues identified with the Cyclone Gabrielle events. We know that we will always have gaps and nothing will ever be perfect, but that doesn't stop us from striving to be the best we can. As I just alluded to, the 2023 events and the subsequent North Island severe weather reports pointed to some common themes which WRC and the EMO here has recognised and we've acted on. Those themes centred around staff competence, confidence and capability, the gaps caused by the lack of exercising, expected national standards weren't prescribed to a detail that other people could properly understand. There were some real gaps in engaging with Māori at the right time during emergency events and making sure that we're preparing our response. So hopefully this is a slide that sort of summarises why the EMO, or where the EMO fits in. We have a couple of significant main obligations. One is to CDEM and one is to ourselves. As we speak, we are currently significantly supporting the civil defence endeavours in Aotearoa and here at the Group Emergency Management Office, the GEC, across the road. We're supplying staff in there. It's a complex juggling act, I think is probably what I'd like to underline here. And it requires constant reprioritisation of demands for service. And we mustn't forget that we operate at a regional level, which only adds to our complexity. We're dealing with 10 other authorities and meeting their needs and their expectations. This is a slide we use to train our staff and probably remind ourselves. It's all a bit complex, and where do we all actually fit in? It'd be fair to say that our 10 sister authorities have exactly the same issues as us, understanding exactly how we fit in. And it took me quite some time to work out how, I've been doing this for 8 years now, how we do fit in properly. And even some days I'm not so sure that we're operating in the right space, and we need to sort of maybe just stop and check ourselves and realign again. There's the 11 authorities, and I've deliberately highlighted the WRC functions there in the teal colours. So we operate and we have obligations on the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Act. But the two main obligations is that we must have trained and capable staff. And the second obligation is that we must be able to keep our core council functions going during times of emergency. The Soil Conservation Rivers Control Act prescribes our obligations in relation to preventing and dealing with erosion arising from flooding and the such like. Maritime New Zealand delegate oil spill response to the regional councils. And so as we are one of them, we have an obligation to deliver marine oil spill response as and when necessary. We have the Biosecurities Act places an emphasis or an obligation on us to support any central government endeavours. For example, the haunts that are going around the country right now. We are always at significant risk because of the nature of our country and our industries that we could easily be compromised by some sort of biosecurity incursion. Our council deals with significant numbers of environmental incidents on a daily basis. You might recall, say, the significant sewer line breakdown in Lake Taupo a few years ago. That was a 3-day fix. We had complete oversight of that in terms of Resource Management Act compliance and making sure that things were being done according to what we all agreed and we expect. We have an obligation for organisational resilience and business continuity. We run a regional resilience team in our building. Bless them, they are full of brains. And I think it was Councillor Nicoll was referring before about Te Whare Kawa, that they do some significant work up there. Our business continuity is always at the forefront of our minds too, because if and when something does go wrong in this building, for example, we lose power, we lose water, the building burns down, or something goes horribly wrong and our business is compromised, we've got to make sure that we're ready to, as quickly as we possibly can, re-establish our essential services and communicate what our intentions are to our ratepayers and to our staff. So just to remind us, we're looking at today, we're just looking at our endeavours. So as I said before, the types of emergencies that WRC leads out or has a significant hand in. Adverse weather, particularly flooding. We're doing that right now. This is the third event, this one we've got going right now, since January 15. So we're all a bit tired now. Bizarrely, drought is also a risk. So we plan for that. I've just touched on marine oil spills. We have a significant store of big equipment out at Horotū at our Northgate yard. And we have 20 formally trained responders trained by Maritime New Zealand. And we have a team of about 40 people who are capable of operating in that environment should and when we need to deploy quickly to, say, anywhere on the coastline. Underlining, we deal in the marine environment, not the freshwater environment, unless there's an immediate threat. What that oil to make its way to the marine environment.
just to add into that too, the team is also on call 24/7 for any of these responses. So while we're dealing with that, we're still on call for what else may or may not occur. So just want to put that out there because things happen in the night. Tsunami warnings come through, the team respond to that, but there's nothing actually happens. So
Tsunamis have always been a risk. Our research tells us that as early as probably 1820, 1830, we had significant numbers of people killed around New Zealand, tsunamis. We are in a place in New Zealand, but particularly around the Coromandel, where the tsunami warnings come in. They come in from Hawaii. One of our on-call staff receives that at the same time it's sent out. But we could be waiting 30 or 40 minutes for further instructions and analysis to come out of central government, out of the bar. So that is just way too long for some events, particularly when you think about the risks that go along the Hikurangi side of things. And we could have tsunamis compromising Whitianga and that whole eastern Coromandel seaboard within 15 to 20 minutes. So we have our own WRC system, getting people on the phones, analysing the size of the tsunami and making decisions about issuing emergency management alert to evacuate. We kick on with that quickly as we possibly can. The system is designed to happen we should be talking within about 5 or 6 minutes, and we should have a decision out in about 15.
Look, many years ago, Julian's predecessor had that very example for the East Coast. The alert came in and he knew if it went to Wellington and they analysed it, it could be too late. So it was damned if he didn't, damned if it didn't. So he pushed the button and he didn't need to. But if he hadn't, so it's a hell of a situation to be in.
Yeah, it is.
So Derek, just Tyra is home for me. Not sure you're aware of that. So well aware of this. And we had our tsunami sirens all shut down. A couple of years back, the decision was made that the technology wasn't up to date, so they were actually pulled out. But so is there anything happening in that space that you're aware of? And I know it's not our.
You mean like in terms of reinstating the
sirens?
Yeah,
and I know there's some work been going on, but it's obviously down to the district. But
so I haven't heard anything at all. So I just know that we rely on the emergency management alert, the EMAs, which we just localise, sending out a message to all mobile phones.
Yeah.
Look, and that system's never going to be perfect either, is it? But we would hope that if there's 100 people and 90 of them have to get an EMA across their phone, they're probably going to make sure the other 10 are okay. So,
yeah, it's a bit of a concern, and you certainly hear from the elderly population, of which the Coromandel does have plenty.
Yeah.
And the fact that but the bulk of them do have mobile phones, but quite often they're turned off or they're hard of hearing, especially events into the evenings
That's
and
right.
nighttime and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a concern, but thanks.
Yeah. And I assume also that Julian would have touched on the fact that there are actually community response plans. Like we have very local designed plans so that people in Tairua or Whangamata will make quick arrangements on behalf of the community to get people into a place of safety.
Yeah, and that just, sorry to interrupt, that does seem to have been stood up a lot more since the sirens are gone and that sort of thing. They seem to be a lot more active of getting those phone lists and all that sort of thing, getting in touch with local marae for the people that they can contact, etc., and then into landowners. So, yeah.
Business continuity, as I said before, level of service interruptions. It could just take one crank call to this building today, and that would push us all out for a couple of hours. That means a lot of stuff doesn't get done in a hurry, particularly if we've got other endeavours like emergency responses going on.
So Derek, if this building, like we were here last year or the year before, and there was a power outage, and it was out, it came on half an hour or whatever it was, but building loses power. We haven't got a generator here, so we can't keep going.
Correct.
So what if that was to be, a multi-day potential? Where's plan B? Where does the council re-establish?
Where do they?
We've got the genesis for civil defence, but not the entire 600 staff.
Oh, that's right. So again, we're lucky that we operate off Surface Pros and we're pretty mobile, the whole organisation. And that's all credit to John Crane and his team during COVID times. So we're pretty mobile there. But yes, there's still a requirement to have some people working in the same locations. And we immediately formed an incident management team and then developed communications. We've already identified our essential services, things we need to stand up immediately, and then the less important stuff that we're secondary services. But it's a trick. We could well be that the GMO across the road is actually being used by somebody else for the same reasons.
Yeah.
And we might be deprioritised. We do have some officers at Paeroa, Northgate, 600 people in there, but you might get 20 or 30 essential people in there taken over. So, I've touched on the major environmental incidents. As, yeah, it appears that wastewaters is usually our enemy, and that we're seeing that in the Wellington and the Wellington events right now, aren't we? Biosecurity, we've already seen Velvet Leaf and the name of the other one. There was two of them. The other one, yeah. And that's when MPI come to us and they sort of say, look, we need 30 or 40 or 50 staff to go and immediately search farms and to go and find these things. And then finally, our CDEM support.
If it helps, sometimes I use an analogy as to where we fit in as a team as opposed to civil defence. So examples touched on. So anything impacting, say, this building or the functions of this council to deliver sits in our team here. If that emergency spreads out into the community around us, Hamilton City Council would be the leading agency that affects them. And then if that spreads out further again to say 2 councils or more, then CDM step up and overarch that. So I hope that clarifies a bit for you.
Thanks, Peter.
So how do we prepare and stay response ready? WRC has an emergency response framework. It's a series of formal documents, very clear prescription of how we do stuff. Document 1 is the strategy, kind of the why we do it. Document 2 is literally the response manual, which says you open it up and it says, think you've got an emergency, go to page 10. And then the third document is the implementation about how we go about teaching ourselves and our staff to manage emergencies. We nicknamed, of course, the EARF. We train our staff on the Coordinated Incident Management System, SIMS framework. Now, SIMS is a national, well, it's an international standard, but in New Zealand, it's part of the national security system. All of our emergency services are subscribed to it. Now I might be sort of telling people what they already know. But, when we walk into an emergency operations centre and fire and police and St John's and us are there, we're all using the same language and using the same systems and presenting in the same manner. We run training sessions. They're scheduled and they're frequent, particularly in the flood space. In the marine oil spill space, we are required to have 2 exercises per year by Maritime New Zealand. They send assessors usually down from Auckland and they watch us undertake the exercise and then report back to us on where our gaps are, and so that we can strive to cover those off. We run workshops, particularly around the incident management team functions. I'll come to the description of IMT shortly. We have, in the marine oil spill space, we have senior regional responders, we have regional responders, and we have regional on-scene commanders. And all of those positions are trained by Maritime New Zealand. We head to Auckland and we undertake 3 to 5 days of training up there, and you have to revalidate at least every 3 years in that space. we have a number of other staff that we lean on significantly, and again, bless them. We have a very good technical team in the telemetry area. All our rivers and many of our rivers and streams are monitored by gauges, which pretty much give us real-time information. We have a number of sites around the region that tell us what the rainfall is doing. We are also hooked into some other sites, which, for example, Fens, the airports, and Mercury. We've got some real depth in our business support specialists. These are the people who know how an emergency has to be set up, and they really get our logistics going. And then finally, of course, we have exercising. Please do.
For you, Mr. Chair. Just ask, you mentioned the civil defence and your emergency response thing. I'm just uncomfortable about where the crossovers and how you define your roles and that sort of thing. So if I'm Joe Blogg citizen, do I have any contact with you, or do I just explain, where you cross over, how you work together?
Sure. A civil defence response is led by the gravitas and usually the scale end. So most of the emergencies that we deal with in our council will never get anywhere near a civil defence response. Civil defence is not a group of people sitting in a room waiting to be activated. It's actually all of us put together, fire, ambulance, us, other authorities, and we combine our efforts at a particular moment to address a particular issue. So, a ratepayer for our council can access us, and we do interact with them, particularly in the marine oil spill space. For all the people who deliver fuel at wharves and jetties, commercial operators deliver fuel at wharves and jetties around our region, they have to come to us, me, and seek a formal approval in accordance with the Maritime Transport Act. So they do interact with us there. They probably see less of us interacting with them, and as the event grows, as say like this flooding event, we lead it out. We're the first people to split and say the weather's going to be particularly adverse, say in 3 to 5 days. We initiate meetings with people who are going to be impacted. We then step them through what we know and what we forecast and what we think is going to happen next. They go away and set up their own responses. In this particular event, this is Otorohanga and Waitonga. They go and set up their own EOCs, Emergency Operations Centres. We keep providing intelligence and information back into the GEC across the road and to these people. And we start supplying some of our staff down and getting them there.
Yeah, that helps because almost from what you're saying, you're the first responders.
We are. We usually detect stuff first in terms of weather and marine oil spills, biosecurity, tsunamis. It'll be us.
Okay, thanks.
That's why, as people are saying, we have someone there's usually at least 3 people on every day ready to respond to that. Specialists, people who know what they're talking about.
Just further to that, there's civil defence members, emergency management officers similar to us working for civil defence that are ensconced in each territorial authority, and they will actively be engaging with marae and other users groups in preparation for a civil defence like Otorohanga.
Derek, I'll just stop you there. I have a question online from Councillor Mahuta. Did you still have a question, Tipper? I just see your hand's gone down again.
No, just to thank the team for their effort, and heard how Maritime New Zealand stress tests our system. We just want to understand how we do that for ourselves and in our own internal responsiveness, and how often we check on that. Kia ora. Of the whole system.
Yep. So sadly, our flood response system is tested multiple times each month, so we think we're okay-ish there. Yeah, and I think the great thing here, councillor, is that the coordinated incident management system is kind of like emergency agnostic. It doesn't matter what we've got going on. We can plug any emergency into the framework and we're off. We know what we have to do. There's particular ways of doing stuff at a particular moment, and that's what we do. Do we test ourselves? Yeah, there are exercises scheduled for our organisation and we are required to undertake one. But we certainly run a lot of drills, particularly amongst ourselves, and for the little bits of downtime that we have in the EMO, we are always reviewing our processes and protocols. We have a lot of templated resource set up and ready to go so that we can just plug and play, if that's the best description. Does that answer your
No.
question, councillor?
That answers my question, and I know there's going to be a lot of learning post-tauranga and these current incidents. I look forward to talking again. Kia ora.
Got it, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tipper, and I'll just pick up on that because I had a conversation yesterday with Rick Leifting, who was heading up to Kuatuna public meeting to discuss the slips and issues up there. But one of the frustrations I picked up from Rick was the fact that no one organisation owns this, and there's been a lot of input from our technical people with the monitoring ability and everything that we have. But there doesn't seem to be, when you bring in NIWA into the picture and that sort of thing, that there's a time and knowledge gap that doesn't seem to be closing. And I know Rick said to me that there's been a lot of reports put forward to government and nothing seems to be actioned on it. Nothing falls out of it. So, I just don't, I wonder, I said to Rick, is there a space for us as governors to help push that sort of message? And he is sending me some of the emails that have gone backwards and forwards and the information, so we can increase the knowledge of where those gaps are and potentially how we could address them. He indicated to a workshop here the other day that we had quite early on information on where that weather was going to form up around Otrahonga and that sort of thing. So made the agencies aware, but there was a 6-hour lapse sort of thing time-wise for that hitting the ground. And the potential learnings that should come out of that and how we can increase that and make that system better. So I think it's certainly something that we can pick up and help push from a governance level, because it doesn't seem to, from an operations thing, there seems to be a frustration there that we're not improving and evolving with what we've got.
I suppose as emergency responders, we're just like everybody else. We think our work's the most important thing in the world. So, but we get it. We get this is a big organisation, has to wear many hats over many important roles. But I suppose the 4 R's of emergency management are reduction, readiness, response, and recovery. The two of the R's are reduction and readiness. And that's where we can always strive to do a whole lot of work. We can't necessarily anticipate correctly what our response is going to be. That has to be done on the fly.
It wasn't a criticism of the organisation as such, but it was more a criticism around the structure, getting all that information out and then getting it to ground level where the responses can happen to let the public know, hey, you guys need to prepare because this is what all our information is telling us. So, yeah.
And then, of course, we've got a limited pool of geniuses like Rick Leifting and his crew, people that are actually capable of working all that stuff out pretty quickly. Yeah. And I underline this. We've got some pretty clever people in this building. You're not hearing from one right now, but we've got some flood modelers who can literally on the back of an envelope calculate the height of the Tikawiti River in 3 or 4 hours and tell us whether or not we need to start evacuation. And they'll do that at 1 o'clock in the morning. So we're really lucky.
Yeah.
So we need to hang on to those people, maybe add a few more if we could, and build some redundancy there because we do rely on just a few.
Yeah. Looks like we've got another couple of questions. So Gary Maguire and then Robbie.
Cyclone Gabrielle highlighted that basically civil defence was a non-entity and that it needed to be rebuilt. How do you see that as progressing now with, like, the work that you've been doing lately has been fantastic in Otahonga and the Coromandel and elsewhere, but the community used to know that when they saw the triangles or they saw the emergency management that something was there, whereas a lot of that was done away with, and people have no idea in the communities who they contact, what they go to, or seeing the physical presence. A lot of communities are getting going, like with the community response groups of Waikato District Council, for example. They're doing a fantastic job on that, but just your comments.
Personal views, yeah, look, so things have certainly changed over the last 20 years in terms of where we've, civil defence has been operating. I think the current minister's been pretty clear that he wants things to be improved significantly. I know that the current minister has reached out directly to all of the authorities, said, give me some assurance that you guys know what you're doing here. Very clear about that. Of course, the proof will come when we actually start responding. Personally, I think we communicate very well at Waikato, that's my experience. Here in the Waikato region, I think we communicate very well with all of our partners. We have an adage in our business, which is our currency is not dollars and cents, our currency is relationships. So I kind of know who's who in the zoo across all of the councils, key contacts are, and I can literally pick them up. I have most of their phone numbers in my phone, and vice versa.
I'll go to Robbie and then I'll come to Noel.
First question is back at you with what you
Lunch
said.
is half an hour away.
Because what I understand, what Rick said the other day, was actually external information, getting it on time was the issue from Met Service the other day was more.
That wasn't the conversation I had with him last night.
Okay, well, he was explaining some of that in our meeting the other day, that it wasn't you guys' response, it was actually him being able to collect information on time to make a response. So I suppose the other, I don't know, it's most probably too early for that. I was going to ask a question about the Coromandel, but I'll leave it till later to you.
Noel.
Look, I'm going to take exception to what Gary has just said about civil defence. Post late 2008-9, Waikato region was examined by National Civil Defence. The region came out with a score of around 47% of capability, an appalling situation, and several councils in the Waikato were also rated at the same time and did around the same. As the Waikato District and group person from Waikato District and together with others, the group went about improving that, and we advocated to the regional council, if you want us to do the job properly, empower them by providing them money and resources to do it. And that's when we went to the regional council, and with some pushback, the regional council accepted and suggested an increase. Yeah, it was only $3 or $4 ratepayer. I think it's up to around 15 or 16 for civil defence now for the group. We worked with getting better quality staff, and I'm just forgetting Julian's predecessor, but he certainly ramped it up, and the team that's there now. And so when COVID came, and looking at the issues with Gabriel and the likes, we can always do better. But if we hadn't done anything back in the, looking at the from Christchurch, if we had done nothing back then, we'd have been in the crap, absolute crap right now. So we can never ever be perfect, and civil defence is a dynamic and changing and evolving situation. And I do miss being involved, but that's a side issue. The reality for me is, I think, Gary, we've got to lift up to governance. And if we sit down here, we can always just take on the vibes of some people who just bash. But we're at a stage now where this is a leading region within New Zealand, and it's an example to others. So
Thanks, Noel. And I don't need to reply, Gary. We'll bring this back to what our functions are in regional council, and we'll stick with that. We don't need to go down the road of commenting any further on civil defence. Thanks.
Thanks. Lee Hazelwood, I think was the name you're trying to remember. So yeah, as I said before, we have an emergency response framework, and that ERF builds on the internationally established systems of coordinated incident management system. The broad details of the ERF. It is bespoke to reflect what WRC imperatives are. So it's just focused on us. It's formally approved by the ELT and it's been adopted by all of us in the council. As I said before, it's got a strategy, it has a response manual, and it has an implementation guide.
Quick question,
Oh, sorry. yeah.
just when was it last approved by council?
2025.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh,
first,
yeah.
first,
Yeah, you were you not paying attention?
No, I don't recall.
sorry, not
I
council,
might-
ELT.
Oh,
Did I
by
say
ELT,
council?
right.
Beg your pardon, I misspoke. did I?
Right, is it approved by council or by ELT?
It's regarded as an operational.
I
document.
thought as much, it's just
Yeah,
that's
sorry,
why I
beg your
couldn't
pardon.
remember approving it. in
Sorry,
the
when I
last
say
6
council,
years.
I mean
Cool.
like us, the people who work.
Thank you.
Sorry,
A lot of
councillor.
responsibility, suddenly, yeah.
The fundamentals, the key parts of the emergency response framework is it has an emergency triage team. From the moment we get a phone call saying something's gone horribly wrong, we call together a group of people. It's one emergency management officer. It's one person from our compliance section, our incident response team, and an SME or maybe two who actually knows about that particular allegation issue that's been raised. That ETT is designed to convene. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Emergency triage team.
On the
Sorry,
screen.
mate. Thank you. Emergency triage team. They come together really quickly and like within a few minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, and they should within 30 minutes arrive at a decision as to whether or not this is an emergency for WRC. If they do decide it's an emergency, that ETT will appoint a person to be the controller, i.e. the person to lead the response out. Always swap the controller out later on if we have to, but that's. So that begs the question of what do we regard as being an emergency? We have a complete definition of it. It's in a critical event or situation, time-sensitive, serious consequences requiring specific arrangements to be implemented in order to manage it effectively. And that's just a couple of photos of obvious emergencies for WRC to manage. As I said, we have an obligation in the marine oil spill space. I've already spoken to the Taupo sewer line break that's pictured down the bottom right. Cyber attack is always on our horizon. My understanding is we have some very good fail-safe procedures in this building to address all of that. But again, never say never. What is the role of the incident controller who's been appointed to manage an emergency? His or her job is to size the scale and understand the potential impacts of that emergency. The controller develops the response plans, not in isolation, but has a team of people in that incident management team to help him or her develop response plans. They will also identify and request and deploy the resources required. Controller will direct the response. And the controller's job is to maintain situational awareness throughout the response phase and into the beginning of the recovery phase. And it's always the recovery phase of any response that usually has a very long tail and a slow burn. How does the controller achieve those objectives? Again, as I said, we use the SIMS, the coordinated incident management system to work. Anyone who has skilled in a SIMS function should be able to perform that function again, no matter what the emergency. Whether you're dealing with a tsunami or whether you're dealing with adverse weather, or dealing with a marine oil spill. And the heart of the SIMS is the incident management team. Now I start to talk about you guys. So you can see at the top there in the teal boxes, 3 teal boxes, policy, governance, and strategic communications. That's where the council laws sit. So please note, the council laws are not required to direct the response. We have a controller who does that. The controller will provide you with all the information that you need as and when. Sometimes the controller doesn't have the information you may think that he or she should have, but another discussion. And you certainly are welcome. It's expected you will express any particular interests or concerns that you would have. You could express them back into the controller and they would be reflected in the response if the controller thought it was appropriate at that particular moment. Now, I don't want to sound too strident about this, but the controller is called the controller for that reason. So it's because that's the person who's in charge of the response. And obviously for efficacy and in the best interest of everybody, we have a person in charge.
A quick question then.
Yeah.
I've seen some other regions where some big stuff's happened. Some councillors have shared information on their Facebook pages and things. Are you aware of kind of there being a bit of a process of good practice, like where they might get information from a source first before doing that, or
Yeah, look,
do you have any advice in case it happens here and you don't want us just to run off and say all sorts of
I
stuff?
would urge you if you think you're dealing with something that's going to be sensitive, send it through to the controller or to the intelligence section of the response team, of the incident management team, and let them know and deal with it and ask for guidance.
Yeah. I do find that a lot of the time, because it goes out on the council Facebook page or whatever one, councillors do just share that one with some condolences and other things and well wishes.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of our main problems, of course, in any responses Councillor Smith was referring to is you get all this information coming in and you might have quite a lot of noise coming from a person and that can derail what the bigger picture of what you're trying to achieve. So, but it goes with the territory, Councillor. We get it. We try to tell you what we know at the time. That's why you got emails from me a few times over the last few responses, the early evening or whatever, so saying this is going on. I'm not being vague when I sort of say, don't worry, we've seen this before. We've got because we know what we're doing. That's why I always invite you to speak to me directly as the regional flood controller. Say, come and speak to me if you've got further questions, and we maybe sort out what a good response. Any response, of course, is built around communicating with the public and ourselves, and we want to make sure that we've got consistent messaging getting out there.
Question, Noel?
Yeah, so Derek, when you are communicating with us, that's great. I suppose what you've just said, when you send out, the first alert and so on, and how do we know which is the intelligence phone number, rather than engaging with you? So is there some way of, or part of the system promoting or proactively sending us a communication number?
So the phone numbers that are attached to the emails are standing numbers, and they're being diverted according to what function's being established. So
Right.
just
So
ring those
Yeah,
numbers.
just can't put it in my mind at the moment, but yeah, so that's there as that comes out.
That's why we deliberately say you're not ringing my cell phones per se. You're actually ringing a standing virtual number. No, thank you. But that's kind of my job, is to make sure you guys we get it. We know you guys have constituents you need to represent, and you've got interests that we may not know about. So we need to be speaking to you. But you're right, it does get pretty hectic. The photos across the bottom, I don't know whether people have seen that.
I think Peter's got a comment around that same.
Just going to say, sensitive and respectfully, it's like a timing thing, isn't it, really, with the information coming out? The analogy I have is you're doing CPR on someone, you get interrupted for, tell me about the victim, and then it's like, oh, they've just now passed. It's like, at that time, as soon as we're able to hands off, we can report. So I guess it's just a sensitivity thing, and timing is the only thing we don't want to get crushed by. But it's as you say, it's
We get it. That's my job to understand that. The photos across the bottom just taken from that's the Group Emergency Coordination Centre across the road, the bottom left. During, I think the bottom left, I think is during Gabrielle. Middle one is Marine Oil Spill Field Exercise. That was Whangamata. Was that Whitianga, was it? I can't remember. And then the exercise, bottom right is exercise Waka Pakaru, which is an exercise we ran for our Transport Directorate a couple of years ago, just to up them through some paces around what would happen if this happened. I don't intend to go through all the functions of the IMT, but I think they're kind of self-explanatory, particularly the varied coloured boxes across the bottom line. Questions? No?
Just in relation to those colours, for those that may be new, the colours line up with the vests that people walk around, so you can easily identify who's in this what.
So the EMO, I'm not just expressing my thoughts here. The EMO, what we think we do well in an emergency. We think we're pretty good at gathering intelligence. Intelligence is an old military term, meaning you get information, you analyse it, you collect it, you analyse it, and you disseminate it, then it turns into intelligence because it's had some sort of value added to it. As I said before, we have flood modelers, engineers, scientists, and SMEs are really good at pulling information together. And if you have we're okay at actually having people coordinate that and manage that function. I think we're very good at using our available resources. I mean, yeah, you could give any one of us $10 and we could buy a trolley full of groceries, I reckon. We understand that our resources are not unlimited. We have to work with what we've got. We do have some good kit lying around in places. Of course, there's other stuff we'd really like more. Particular recent emerging skill tools we have is HydroNet. I don't know whether Rick Leefton's spoken about that.
Yep.
Man, that's a great piece of kit that we're just about ready to implement operationally. Our GIS guys have to really ramped up over the last 6 months and given us a quick capture. So now we have helicopters that fly over. I think you went on.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair. Flew the Coromandel. They took photos off their phone and put it in 30 or 40 minutes. That is sent into a dashboard in the GEC showing where the photo was taken. When you click on the photo, it shows that particular piece of ground. And I just saw a piece of kit yesterday where they can now take photos out the window, 2K that way, and then the photo will, through AI, will tip up and you'll be able to see it over the top. Now, again, genius is working in our building. We leverage our existing skill set. So there's quite a few of us who are trained and we think we know what we're doing. I don't say that arrogantly, but we think we know what we're doing when setting up on the SCOs. We spend a lot of time maintaining our relationships. Yeah, we go to CDM professionals meetings, we go to the Waikato Hazardous Substances coordinating committee meetings, we meet with FENS, we meet with Atu St John's, we do exercises involving and engaging with those people. Again, we know what there's in the zoo. What are our gaps? North Island severe weather events in 2023 and subsequent reports all referred to confidence and competence of staff. There was not in our area, but particularly down in Hawke's Bay. Some staff felt they were being thrown under the bus. They were being pushed into doing or executing roles in an emergency response, and they'd never been trained in it. Or if they had been trained in it, they certainly hadn't been exercised in it. They could barely remember how to use it. So that is always a gap for us as well. I can't think of anything worse than asking our staff to go and do something and they go with the best of endeavours to try and do it, and they feel like they're letting people down. We have irregular and infrequent exercising opportunities that needs to be improved. We don't have a dedicated EOC. It's not a showstopper for us, but it'll make things a whole lot easier if we had one.
What was EOC again?
Sorry, emergency operations. I should have seen out a glossary before I started
good.
talking, shouldn't I? Sorry.
I was keeping up until then.
Emergency operations centre. That's what's happening in Otorohanga today. Is the EOC. That's a local centre, emergency operations centre. A regional one's called a coordinating centre. So that's time and money to address the above. In our view, we don't need to spend a whole lot of money to fix up most of these training gaps. And we don't need a whole lot of extra resource that's going to, you know, or assets that are going to cost a lot. We do need a significant uptake from our staff to be trained and maintain their capability in this. Because as right now, reliant on a very small cell of just a few people to undertake these responses. And some of us, two of us right here, are pretty tired. You know, we work for, I just finished 6 weeks on call, Christmas to the end of January. February was my month off. Well, that lasted up until February 12. So, you know, February was my month off. That lasted for 2 weeks. Back, you're working Saturdays, you're working Sundays. And one extra day of work doesn't mean one extra day of holiday is going to make it all right again. Those who've worked shift and odd hours, it grinds you down.
I've just got a few questions lining up, Derek, so I'll get them, Mikhail.
Yeah, just on the gaps, I think it's really, really important that, you know, the people are trained up when you look at the vast area that the Waikato region is, and not only that, the weather events that have been happening. I mean, it's summertime and,
Yeah.
you know, massive. The other question or comment I'd like to make is just the equipment, because again, it's a vast kind of spectrum of what you need, and especially down Taupo, if we have a truck that goes into the lake, you know, how much time that takes to get that equipment down there. Do you, because we're right at the end of the spectrum of Waikato, I know that has been thought of having that equipment stored down there, because it is a major, if something, you know, chemical goes into that lake, because does it still come from Hamilton or at your depot?
Yeah, so the just trying to find the photo. Yeah, like if we were to deploy that bottom right photo, deploy boom equipment, probably have to come from Northgate Hototu, and that's going to take several hours to get down there. Yeah. The other thing is there has to be some sort of appreciation of exactly what you can do. Sometimes you can't do a lot. In fact, often you can't do a lot. So, for example, when you get a diesel spill, it's highly volatile. It will evaporate pretty. It's acutely and immediately toxic to the environment, but the impacts do dissipate quite quickly. By the time you load a truck and send the boom down there, boom might not pick it up, and secondly, by the time you get down there, it's well gone.
Right, I'll get a, oh, you finished, Mikhail? Yeah, I'll go to Liz, and I got Robbie, Noel and Jen.
Just following up on the staffing and my experience is that you often look externally for volunteers who can then be trained. Do you do that here as well? I just know that in the past, you know, we've gone out to our communities. I understand the training is crucial, but is that something regional council do?
No, we don't. The civil defence guys do ask people from walks of life to help out, but no, we operate within our own sphere.
Yeah, Robbie,
Can we go back to that last slide?
the truck.
The truck and the gate.
Sure.
So I think we had this conversation 3 years ago, didn't we, or 2 years ago?
Oh, yes, if you've been here long enough.
Yeah,
you've heard me give
yeah. So in that, there was talk that response to Lake Taupo, that we were going to investigate that if those assets could be put on a helicopter or and shipped to places that they could be in our outer regions within an hour. So we did discuss that around the table that day, that we need that sort of capability.
Yeah, I don't recall that directly, but
I know I brought it up. So yeah, I would have brought it up. So I think that's, you know, we have got a sparse region that it's, and in emergencies, it isn't easy to get to some of the places. So we must be capable of getting that response there in a time reflected. If you're going to contain it, you have to be able to get there within a certain amount of hours. Comes down to not 6 hours, or it's hours. Is really that we've got to decide if we want to get capable in that spot. To the gate, and that become a real issue last month when it was closed, that our staff were having to do traffic management, not gate management.
That's right.
And I think we need to take a lead here. That I'm not saying we should be traffic managers at all, but we've got to go back to Wakatahi, whoever's I don't know who the organisation is, but they pay the contract to Higgins, I'd imagine. We've got to have something that we've got like at Northland at the Paratahuna Road 26 intersection. So have flashing lights or something that comes down that this road is closed. So there's
I'll go to Greg for a comment. I've got a speaking order if I can get those mics turned off, thanks. And just Greg around learnings out of that incident.
Absolutely. That was it was a major. It was very disappointing not to be able to get the traffic management that we needed. Fortunate that we could backfill that effectively. We will be approaching Wakatahi alongside with Hauraki District around that because that was a significant learning. It's not a unique one as well. Unfortunately, it's from time to time we do find that the road and resources are deployed in different places and a stretch to our needs. So it's absolutely a learning out of this exercise that we'll be approaching.
Oh, it's not just that.
Yeah.
They were actually stopping the gate being closed because trucks were turning up going, oh, can you just let us through? Because otherwise we're going to be sitting here for the next 24 hours. So our staff were actually having to decide if we were going to let a truck go through a floodplain and over the bridge. And that's a real issue. So that shouldn't have been our decision. The road should have been closed. Our staff's job was, or your emergency response staff was to close the gate, not to make those outside decisions. That was not our responsibility.
Absolutely. That's
And that's the bit I want to get clear.
That's been noted.
Yeah.
It absolutely wasn't acceptable.
So, the capability of 2 or 3 years ago was that it's disappointing that our staff haven't taken up to help out in this space when we are needing, because I thought we made it quite clear that we wanted more staff to take part in it, to give them capability. So I'm a bit disappointed in that if it hasn't been taken up, because I thought we made it quite clear that we were prepared to pay for training and everything to help in that space.
If I can make a comment on that. So we have lifted our training numbers since our earlier conversations. I think we're up around about that level 2 training requirement. I think the challenge for us though is there's always a bit of a downward pressure on those numbers as well with people leaving the organisation. So it's continuing to be, it still needs to be a real focus for us to maintain that level 2 competency, but also then take it further to level 3 and 4 competency, which is our functional leadership.
Because there's key people there that are like yourself that are getting burnt out that just can't be replaced. And I know we've got a couple of those in the hierarchy that are they're trying to do their job, that job, and then they are getting asked in from the TAs to do other jobs and the emergency response, and they're just getting burnt out.
Yeah. Carl, did you want to comment around the Taupo incident?
Yeah, just a comment and a further comment on Keith earlier on, just about whether whether the public or the ratepayer can call the EOC. That's probably was one of the big problems when a truck goes in. No one's really quite sure on who to call, and I think it needs to be a lot more clearer who sits above, like is it EOC, Taupo District Council, or DIA, who fits in there. And I think this wouldn't it be the EOC up the top?
For the truck event?
Yeah.
The natural call is actually to call fire or police, and they know they know.
Yeah, there was even confusion back then on who the police then call. Is it the local district council or DIA? And so I still think that hierarchy needs to be clear on those.
Warren, can I just help a bit with that? Sorry, it's me over here, Warren, just saying. Since this incident, exactly on the lines you've described, Robbie, there's been a cross-organisational plan developed for Taupo that you would have heard in EPC. Wayne Reid from our incident response team has been leading, which has resulted in bringing together all of those agencies that get involved with these sorts of incidents in Taupo. That's resulted in some equipment, which is typically held with DIA, actually being held on some of the marae down there so that you can actually have rapid response. So if there's a little bit of a gap in knowledge here around that, quite happy to get Wayne to come and talk specifically about that, that cross-agency action plan that's been developed off the back of this very incident, Mikhail, to make sure that everybody knows where to go, when and who to go to. So quite a lot of progress in that space around Lake Taupo.
Thanks for that clarification, Brent. Yeah. I've got Noel and Jen, and I do want to move this on, thanks.
Yeah, so not going backwards, Robert, but
Promise.
no, going forward. So I see what you're doing. Your group is doing what the district councils do in their role, in their responsibilities in their districts in emergency response. So when the funding was done for the group, that was at the group level and the region pays. So am I anticipating that you're highlighting not only what you're doing, but the need to fund more activities for an annual plan bid, or is this just information? Because if you're not able, the community won't thank us if we don't resource the areas that we need to. So I really want to understand, Derek, if we need to do more, and we can always do more, but what's reasonable, more that's reasonable, and if so, are you putting forward a budget?
So
Cut to the chase.
I won't comment on what the group is looking for.
No,
because
I'm not
that's
worried about the
domain of
group,
Julian
but
Brent.
you've got your, the same responsibility as districts to do your bit as a regional.
As a
entity.
regional council, look, quite frankly, council, if you want to shout us another couple of EMOs, that'd be great. Because there's 3 of us that do it right now.
But you haven't got a business case for this annual plan.
I think we have in the next financial year.
So that's the LTP.
I think there's
Yeah,
one.
so through you, Mr. Chair, so there was consideration of this during the last long-term plan, and some additional roles were identified for year 4 of the LTP. Obviously, that will be up for further discussion as we get into the LTP discussions coming up later this year.
Okay.
But there's no annual plan bid for the current annual plan that we're considering next week.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Did you want to add to that, Peter?
Just, yeah, obviously the evidence of climate change and these things happening a lot more frequently, a lot more intensely, it just leans naturally to that way. But however the processes are, we need to work within, but that certainly would be immensely helpful having extra.
Jen?
Yes, good segue. But I'm just so mindful that having been here now for the 3rd term, is probably the 3rd time that you've sat in front of me. We don't see you guys in very much. We don't have that much oversight, and we don't want to get too into it. I agree, Noel. It's just that the issue of the burnout and the BAU needing to get done. We had a good discussion at Keith's committee the other day about this, because I had a big rant about the adaptation planning work wanting to get done, and Greg always reminds us that with events happening, that's going to slow down again. We do need to address that one. I would actually quite like us to keep more of an oversight on it, just a little bit more, and I wonder whether Keith's committee is the kind where you would. And what I'm addressing there is just keeping more of an oversight of the what Greg says, increased training has been happening. We didn't really know that. We did remember asking for it, but we don't track it as such. It might be tracked into finance and.
It is. We
It
have
is?
seen reports on it, yeah.
Oh, good, thanks. I'm going
And
too
also-
far off.
yeah.
But I do wonder how we actually address the issue, because it's just been coming up again and again that the tension's there, and I'm mindful we're putting a lot of pressure on the CE to deliver work streams, which then create the issue of not releasing people to do this type of training. So I'm not sure how we address it, but I do wonder if we can do something by either tracking the LTP KPIs and those performance KPIs, or even having a CE KPI to allow our CE to rebalance that a little bit. So something for the councillors just to think about.
I'll go to Greg, because I believe the buck stops there. So Greg.
So
Sure.
through you, so we do have an LTP KPI for which specifically relates to training, and that requires, I think for this year, it's a improving trend in terms of the training that we have available. As I said, our focus probably over the last couple of years has been to lift that level 2 training, but we do need to continue to take that further. And look, it does mean prioritising staff time. And as you point out, there's a lot going on in our business, so it is a question of prioritising and getting the right people involved as well. It's not everyone's cut out for it, but getting those people who do shine through the level 1 and level 2 training to take them forward into level 3.
Yeah, it's just that with the increasing events every summer now and our BAU slowing down. We're just keen to actually address it. Yeah.
Do you want to comment, Peter?
Yes,
So-
thank you, Chair. So just for clarity, so there's two things we're talking about here in terms of staffing resource. So getting the numbers up to intermediate or CL2 trained to 146 odd staff at the moment. That's really aimed at surge capacity for civil defence when they stand up. Where a lot of the fatigue is kicking in the small specialist skills team is we have every bad weather event. There's briefings. We mentioned the on-call and talking with Met Service. That's where the on-call and people getting burnt. So it's up to me to present a plan, which I have in my head, to the ELT about how we can resource that a bit better without increasing staff or seeking more funding for staff, but mainly allowing staff that want to be trained the time to train and have that BAU park. So in a nutshell, that's kind of my package I need to present to them if that helps you.
Thanks for that clarity. Robbie, did you have another question?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about that. So if we we've got a roles going, our senior engineer and things like that, someone like that would bring that would want to fit in behind you guys as a backup would be really, because they'd have the structure, some understanding, I'd imagine. That's like, if we fulfilled that role, may actually help you guys as well.
Yes, my thinking in that, the analogy through the chair is like an AOS or Armed Defenders Squad in the police. So there's lots of police out there doing stuff. But then there's an event, 20 people jump in and they focus on that for a day, a week, whatever it takes. And everyone else picks up the work and then they come back into it. So that kind of model is what I was proposing.
So just with ICM, what's going on at the moment isn't actually helping you guys with some key roles missing. Most probably, I'm not saying it's going to fix it completely, but it's going to help if those roles were filled.
Emergency management is a skill set that can be learned by many. Don't have to be from a particular walk. And I think it's an organisation wide.
True, but like some of those roles, they understand people, they understand how to deal. Like that's the bit I'm getting to. It's not that other people can't learn it. Those people, most people have got natural skills in that area. Is all I wasn't pushing anyone else out.
No.
Okay.
I understand.
Yeah. And the other question would be that burnout, I'd say, is a real, I agree, big problem. Especially when we're an area like Coromandel that's just getting hammered all the time. And I know, I'm not going to that, but
Shall we leave it there then?
no, but
It's
it's how you support them from Hamilton is the real issue, because I suppose they are isolated, and not saying other areas around aren't isolated. If it happened down west coast, out the other side of going towards Taranaki, they'd feel the same. Most probably they can be isolated off and cut off from the rest of our communities really easily. So I think that's most probably something we need to look in more in the future. Our elder ones, we can't get to them, and how do we?
Thanks, Robert. Do you want to comment, Greg?
Yeah, so
quickly?
we have a deployment policy that is framed around staff wellbeing, and it talks about things like how long people should be working. We also have other policies that relate to when people should be travelling and how long. So one of our focuses right now actually is that we are seeing a real uptick in the demand on our organisation right now to support the EOC. And we are having to actually go back to that policy and make sure that the demands that are getting placed on our organisation or the requests align to that policy, so that we are not getting out our staff that are going down, particularly to support Aotearoa. I think it's probably the hotspot at the moment.
Oto and
And across at the gig as well.
I think to pick up on Robbie's point, he's looking for confidence from a governance point of view that there are some wraparound services going around those staff that are their time is being called on far more than what would be a normal working environment. Derek, how many more slides do you have? I'm just trying to get a time.
I'm about halfway through, Chair, but I've got one more slide and there'd be a natural break for lunch if that helps. Yeah. So, and that kind of just summarises about what we've just been talking about here, how we see that we can fix some of the gaps that we've just discussed. we have to acknowledge that WRC is in the business of emergency management. That is our thing. That's what we have to do. We do have to commit to training and exercising, and we have to increase the frequency of our training opportunities. There are some obvious barriers which we're already talking about and putting things in place. We have BAU tensions. Sorry, Councillor Smith, business as usual tensions. Standby allowances as an issue that's come to the surface over the last year, where some staff don't feel it's worth making themselves available and inconvenient for a week or a month, depending on what you're doing. We have low on-call numbers, like people who are available to respond back to work within 10 or 15 minutes. We need to broaden that. I do say this, and this is a Derek Hartleyism. Some days it's like standing on the end of a balloon. As soon as you get rid of that problem there, that happens over there.
Welcome to farming.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So I'm about halfway through, Chair. Is that a good place for me to stop?
I think that's a good place to stop, Derek. Yeah, thank you. So we will break for lunch. If we can come back at 1:10, and we'll carry on. So you're another hour sort of thing after lunch? Is
Probably
that
less, but
probably less? Okay.
depends on some of
Yep.
the questions coming out.
So,
So thank you.
so we'll break now and back at 1:10. Thank you.